common in southern latitudes and almost universal in tropical natives. Persons of this temperament are better adapted to hot climates because electricity dominates over magnetism, and they do not antagonize the climate by the radiation of magnetism, but rather thrive on the magnetism which they absorb. This temperament is closely analogous to the condition of tropical animals and birds. The magnetic temperament exists when magnetism dominates over electricity in the organization. Its characteristics are vibration, radiation, heat, and light. This temperament was formerly called the sanguine or blonde temperament. It is distinguished by light-colored, warm, moist skin, light-colored or red hair, fresh ruddy or florid complexion, light-colored or blue eyes, rounded form of body, often plump or corpulent, large chest, square shoulders, indicating a very active heart and vital organs. It is remarkable for versatility of character, jovial disposition, fond of good living and great variety, changeableness, activity, and vivaciousness. The temperature of the body is warm and the circulation very strong. This temperament vibrates between great extremes of disposition, develops great force of radiation and driving power, and is universally characterized by warmth, enthusiasm, and high color. It is produced by the climates of northern and temperate latitudes, and is almost universal in the natives of extreme northern countries. Persons of this temperament are better adapted to cold climates, because magnetism dominates over electricity. Consequently, they produce more animal heat, and are better able to endure the rigors of a cold climate. The same general conditions are found to exist in birds and animals inhabiting northern latitudes. Anatomical temperaments. The temperaments are also classed anatomically as motive, where the bones are large and strong and the muscular development is stronger than the nutritive or mental system. Persons of this temperament are active, energetic, and best adapted to outdoor pursuits and vigorous employment. Vital, in which the nutritive or vital system is most active. Large lungs, stomach and blood vessels, and corpulent and plump figure. Persons possessing temperament are inclined to sedentary occupations, and if the brain is large and of good quality, are able to do an immense amount of mental labor without breaking down. They should take systematic exercise and avoid fats and stimulating foods and drinks to obtain the best results. Most active. The body is not adapted to hard muscular labor, and there is not enough vitality of nutritive power to nourish the brain in the heavy demands made upon it. Such persons incline to mental effort and literary work, and for a time display great brilliancy, but sooner or later collapse, unless this condition is corrected by regular hours, plenty of sleep, the absence of stimulants and the cultivation of muscular and vital force. This temperament is distinguished by a relatively large head and small body. Piriform face, high, wide forehead, and usually sharp features. Chemical temperaments. There are three principal fluids which circulate through the body, viz., arterial blood, venous blood, and lymph. As the blood passes out from the heart through the arteries, it is strongly charged with magnetism and is very strongly acid in quality. As it returns to the heart through the veins, it has expended its magnetism and its acidity has been very much neutralized. The lymph is an alkali fluid, and it circulates through the lymphatic vessels as a reserve force of vital food. The predominance of either of these fluids in the constitution greatly modifies the character and gives rise to the classification of the chemical temperaments. As every cell in the body comes in contact with an acid and an alkali fluid, we may, by estimating the relative quantities of each fluid, arrive at a very accurate judgment of the chemical condition of the body. And these elements are also valuable in estimating the amount of magnetism that will be produced by the organization through chemical action, as every cell by its contact with these fluids is constituted a magnetic battery. Royal blood predominates. It is distinguished by convexity of features and sharpness of angles. The face is usually round in general outline and convex in profile, the forehead prominent at the eyebrows and retreating as it rises, the nose Roman, the mouth prominent, The teeth convex in form and arrangement and sharp. The chin round and sometimes retreating. The body is angular and generally convex in outline, with sharpness at all angles. This temperament is usually accompanied with great activity of mind and vivaciousness of disposition, and sometimes develops great energy and asperity. It is very likely to exhaust itself prematurely. The alkali temperament exists where lymph is in excess over arterial blood. It is distinguished by concavity of features and obliquity of angles, or rather the absence of angles. The face is usually broad in general outline, and concave in profile, the forehead prominent and wide at the upper part, and medium in development at the eyebrows, the nose concave, the mouth retreating, the teeth flat in form and arrangement, the chin concave and prominent at the point. The body is round and inclined to corpulency, without angles. This temperament is usually well stocked with vitality, but unless actively employed is likely to become dull and overloaded with adipose tissue and lymph. From the foregoing observations it is evident that the temperaments combine in each individual according to whichever temperament is found to predominate in these three divisions. Thus one man will have an electric motive acid temperament, another a magnetic mental acid temperament, another a magnetic vital alkali, and so on through all the combinations which can be made from the 7 elementary temperaments. This blending, when finally estimated, constitutes the temperament of the individual. The ideal condition would, of course, be a perfect equilibrium of the elements of each division, in which case the individual would be said to have a perfectly balanced temperament. Electricity is the generative passion of space. It is manifested by the states of gravity, receptivity, coldness, and darkness. Magnetism is the generative passion of matter. It is manifested by the states of vibration, radiation, heat, and light. The eternal affinities which exist between these conditions produce all the phenomena of growth. Growth is the change which takes place in a structure in obedience to the law of conformity to the changes which take place in its environment. Man is the most complex organism known to this planet. He stands at the end of a long line of development, extending from the simplest form of mineral, through the vegetable and animal kingdoms, to his own position in the cosmos, and embracing and including in his own structure a representation of every form below him. But when this exceedingly complex structure is analyzed, it is found to consist wholly of combinations of the simpler forms which existed before him. In the light of a rational philosophy, therefore, we are forced to consider man as a creature of growth and subject to exactly the same natural laws as the objects which surround him. Any attempt to regard him as an exception results in the calamities which must always attend presumption and ignorance. The well-balanced temperament, the temperamentum temperatum, of the ancients is an ideal condition in which there is in fact no temperament. All the organs of the body being perfectly in harmony, and exhibiting no preponderance of one over the other. Many persons approximate this condition, but it is difficult to find one in which it is so nearly attained as to make the proper classification of his temperament under the above heads a difficult matter. However desirable such a condition may be from a purely physiological standpoint, the fact remains that all great and powerful natures, the men who have been the leaders in the battles of literature, art, science and war itself, have had well-defined and pronounced temperamental conditions of organization. We have now fully demonstrated that in his scientific delineation of character the professional phrenologist depends upon something more than mere configuration of skull. The great modifying conditions of health, quality and temperament in every case give us the foundation of the character. It will be seen, some medical authorities to the contrary, notwithstanding, that the science of phrenology has a firm basis on the established principles and known facts of physiology and anatomy. Bearing these facts in mind, we will now proceed to the discussion of the scientific principles governing the phrenological examination of theory of the localization in different organs of the brain of the corresponding faculties of the mind. The brain is the keyboard of the body. It is an error to claim that it is the exclusive organ of intelligence. The brain performs substantially the same function for the body which the keyboard does for the piano, or which the central office of the telephone system performs for its various subscribers. Magnetism received from the exterior of the body is transmitted to the brain where it produces a result. This result in turn is transmitted to various portions of the body. Properly, therefore, intelligence is distributed over the entire body, and the amount of intelligence which any individual possesses will be found to be in exact proportion to the size and quality of his body and the perfect adaptation, cooperation and adjustment of its parts. The brain is an oval mass of soft tissue which completely fills the internal cavity of the skull. It is composed of two substances, a white fibrous substance which forms the internal portion and a grey, cortical tissue which forms the external layer. This grey substance lies in folds or convolutions, the furrows or sulci, dipping deeply into the interior of the brain. It is found by dissection that the brain of an intellectual man exhibits a larger number of convolutions than one of small intellectual caliber, and that the convolutions are deeper and the layer of grey substance thicker. And in consequence of the increase in number and depth of convolutions there is a brain with skull removed, wider expanse of surface as well, for the distribution of grey matter. Hence the relative proportion of grey matter in different brains has come to be regarded by physiologists as a test of mental power. Many idiots have large and well-formed brains, but the convolutions are shallow and few and the grey matter small in quantity and extent of surface. Physicians often ask me how I can estimate the relative quantity of grey matter in a living head without cutting into it. I refer them to the study of quality and temperament which I have clearly expounded in this lecture. Do you ever find hickory leaves growing on a pine tree? Show me the bark of a tree and I'll tell you the quality of the wood within. Show me the skin, the hair, the eyes of a man and I'll tell you the quality of every organ in his body as well as the quality of the brain. I recently astonished the superintendent of an insane asylum by pointing out to him that the quality of the hair, the eyes and the skin of idiots was essentially different from the quality of those of more highly endowed persons, and could be told in the dark by a person of educated sensibilities. The quality and texture of the brain being determined, the next step is the consideration of its size. Other things being equal in all natural objects, size is the measure of power. By the term other things in relation to the brain, we mean temperament, quality and health. This simple principle explains why a great many people who carry large heads are endowed with but little intellectual power. The heads are filled with sawdust, in other words, a brain of poor quality, supported by a feeble body, or vitiated by excessive temperamental conditions. Small head, brilliant in observation, deficient in reflection. Men who carry small and misshapen heads are often brilliant in certain directions, and this limited brilliancy in special lines causes them to be spoken of by superficial observers as men of great ability and apparent exceptions to the phrenological rule. The fact remains, however, that in no case is comprehensive greatness ever exhibited in a head of small dimensions, large size of brain, accompanied with robust health, high quality and good temperamental conditions, gives the highest phase of powerful mentality and comprehensive greatness. Small size of brain, with poor health, low quality and erratic temperamental conditions gives the lowest form of mentality and constitutional inferiority. Between these two extremes we may find every conceivable modification and form of human character according to the various combinations of normal and abnormal conditions. Size of brain then is a measure of power when judged by an enlightened understanding of physiological, anatomical and pathological conditions. The phrenologist goes one step farther and asserts that size of brain in any particular region, judged by the same standards of comparison, is an indication of local power. Criminal, every portion of the body is created for a specific function. You never see with your ears, you do not taste with your eyes, you do not walk with your teeth. There is no waste in nature. Every part has its special duty to perform. The part of the brain which lies in front of the ears has a different function from that which lies behind them. The parietal lobes of the brain are not placed in the skull for the same purposes which the frontal and occipital lobes represent. Every fiber has its function, every convolution its purpose. All that remains for us to do is to compare known forms of heads and note the coincidence of character exhibited by similar developments and the divergences of character accompanying diverse developments. In the past century, these observations have been sufficiently successful to locate the general functions of the external portions of the brain which are situated so that observation and comparison are possible. 42 general organs are now located with definite certainty, and these have been subdivided with sufficient accuracy so that there are over 100 localized centers of cerebral development which can be accurately measured and their mental power determined to the advantage of the individual and the benefit of society at large. Philosopher, the brain is double. It is divided into two hemispheres by the falx cerebri, a partition which follows the middle line of the skull. Each hemisphere contains one organ pertaining to each faculty of the mind. The size of each organ is estimated, not by feeling for bumps or depressions, but by measuring the length of the fibers of the brain from their common center in the medulla oblongata, at the head of the spinal column, and at a point distant from the ears in the interior of the head. From this common center the fibers of the brain range horizontally and upward in all directions like the branches of a tree. Development of brain fiber laterally gives a wide head, longitudinally, from the medulla oblongata to the forehead and to the occiput, a long head. Development upward raises the crown, and I have in my collection skulls which show by actual measurement a relative difference of over 3 inches in development of brain fiber to certain localities of brain surface. Viewed in the light of these facts and principles as here expounded, the phrenological position is established, and the childish objections of those who sneer at this beautiful science fall crumbling to the dust. The last great fact to be considered is this: exercise of any portion of the body develops it, enlarges it and adds to its strength. Disuse weakens, paralyzes and ultimately destroys. This rule applies to all parts of the body, and to the brain more particularly because the nervous tissue of which the brain is composed is more rapidly used up and renewed than any other portion of the body and hence more susceptible to change. Phrenology solves all problems of education and enables every individual to develop a symmetrical and well-formed brain, and with it a harmonious character, by pointing out those portions that are deficient and those that are strong, and thus enabling him to secure a really well-trained mind, by memorizing the different organs and their functions, particularly those in which you are marked as excessive or deficient, and by practicing the observation of your daily conduct and learning to analyze it phrenologically, i.e., to note those occasions when deficient faculties have failed to act, and when predominating faculties have caused you to act hastily or contrary to good judgment, you will soon become painfully aware of your true faults, and by conscientious action of reason and exercise of self-control will be able to correct them. In the same manner predominating talents may be tested and proved, and you will rejoice in the birth of new aspirations, hopes and impulses. In a word, you may be, by means of this science, placed in full command of your mental powers and learn to control and direct them as the skillful engineer controls and directs his locomotive. Concede the fact that these differences in form, quality, temperament and health mean anything, and all that we claim for phrenology follows logically and as a matter of course. In the light of this demonstration of known facts, it follows that character can be read, and if read, then he can be assigned to the position of its best use. Foulness in the profession, trade or avocation suitable to the employment of the talents demonstrated to exist. If phrenology gives the index to your character, as we have proved it does, then it also forms the key to the solution of the problem of matrimony by describing the character which will harmonize with yours in congenial companionship, financial success and the improvement of offspring. It likewise is a trusty guide in the formation of business relations as partners, employers or employees, and directs us in the choice of associates, teachers or companions in social life. It gives to the anxious parent the knowledge of inherited and acquired talents in cherished darlings of the household, and in every relation of life, at every moment of existence it is an advantage, a comfort, an assistance, a thing of beauty and a joy forever.